Welcome to Sunday Morning Sermons, an online ministry of Family Bible Church of Rotterdam with pastor and teacher Tom LeGodais.
We're looking at Mark 6:30 through 56. Then the apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. So before this, in Mark 5, he sends them out two by two, and he says, go heal the sick and go preach and teach and try to bring people to me, do your words and actions and do the right things. So now this is them coming back. They leave. In between that, John the Baptist gets beheaded. Then they come back, and now they're going to tell Christ all the things they did.
And he already knows.
Huh?
And
I'm sure he already knew. But can you imagine those guys? He's not going to do what we did. They must have been freaking out. Like, they probably couldn't wait to tell him because he gave them power to heal and all that stuff that they didn't have before. They only seen him do stuff. So now they got to do stuff. They got to perform some miracles, right? By the direction of Christ and what Christ wanted to do. So now they come back and they tell him what they did and they tell him what they taught, which is important too, right? Because what does our teaching have to be centered on? Everything that Christ said. What is our teaching? What does my teaching have to be centered on? What Christ said. If I start making stuff up or just pulling things out of thin air that aren't true, God's going to have a problem with me, right? So we got to make sure we teach the right things, preach the right things when you're a preacher and a teacher. And you guys got to check stuff out and try to learn on your own too, right? And study on your own, not just here on Sunday. And make sure you're looking at the right stuff too, right? Then he says, and he said to them, come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. So he tells them, take a break now. You guys went out there, you did some hard work, you taught, you preached, you raised people from the dead, all the kind of things you did. Why don't you take a break? And I heard a pastor tell me, if I can remember his name, I'd tell you. He was in Clifton Park for a long, long time. Now he's retired, moved to Texas, of all places. And he said, preacher, when I was young too, young man, make sure you take a break every 7 years. I never did, but oh well. So he said you should take a break every 7 years. And he did that in his whole ministry, took a break every 7 years. He'd take a whole month off and go somewhere. I just can't afford to go anywhere for a month. And I'd rather stay here with you guys anyway. So he tells them to go rest for a while, just recharge and think about what they did, and just draw closer to God and probably pray, right? Get off by yourselves and pray. For there are many coming and going, and they didn't even have time to eat. So people were hounding them, right? These guys went and did miracles. Now they're back. Now Christ is there. So they see what God's doing, right? The people in the town. And they just want to bombard them and it's every man for himself, It looks like, I'm thinking of Christmas time when like that one toy's on sale. Everybody's trying to get that one toy. Back in it, they don't really do that much anymore. I remember back in the day.
Taking me Elmo.
No, I remember Cabbage Patch dolls.
Cabbage
Patch dolls in like the 80s or whatever.
Ruxpin.
You had people stabbing each other and beating each other up. That's crazy, right? So they departed to a deserted place in the boat by themselves. Okay, so they're by the sea, right? It's not that wide. What they would do is travel close to the shore. So what do you think the people did? They ran along the shore because they wanted to follow them and get to where they were going, right? So, but the multitude saw them departing, and many knew him and ran there on foot from all the cities. They arrived before them and came together to him. So they got to where Christ, they got to the next dock, the next landing place, next whatever, before Christ and the boat could get there. So we want to talk to this guy, we want our miracles, and we want it now. We're not okay trying to go get a rest or take a break. Does God really ever take a break though?
No.
No. So we can call on God whenever we want. He doesn't stop listening at 12 o'clock. Like we always say, right? Sometimes we're kidding around. So God is always there for us no matter what's going on. And we don't have to run to him though, right? We just got to call on him, right? You want to find God, just stop and, what do you say, be still and know that I'm God? So sit still for a minute and just pray and call on God to help you out. And he promises he will, right? And whatever the end or outcome of something is, it's God's will and it's always better for you. So they get there before him, they come to him. Verse 34. And Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude, which in the Greek means a whole bunch, which same thing in English, right? But it's really a lot of people, and was moved with compassion for them. So he feels sorry for them, right? I think God feels sorry for mankind right now.
Yes.
I think he feels sorry for us, but I think he's kind of annoyed with people right now. People are turning their backs on Christ left and right, and then wonder why things are going wrong. It's because they're turning their backs on Christ, right? because they were like sheep. And here it is. Because they were like sheep, not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. So why is the world lost? Because they're sheep without a shepherd. So what are they doing? They're making themselves the shepherd. I'm my own shepherd, right? So Christians say the Lord is my shepherd. The outside world says what?
I'm my shepherd.
I'm my shepherd, or the government's my shepherd, or that car's my shepherd, or whatever my hot wife's my shepherd. Whatever they have that they like so much, that becomes their what? that becomes their shepherd, right? Because they're living their life to keep that happy, or to keep on to that, or hold on to that, or to get the next thing better. So material things become their shepherd. They're driving what they really want. And then they wonder, again, like I said, they wonder why things aren't going right. Now these people are wandering out with no shepherd, but what they do, they heard about Christ. So they were actually looking for a religious shepherd, right? They were looking for someone to teach them about God, and they're looking for a miracle. Some of them are looking for some of them are looking for a dog and pony show.
Yeah.
And you get that today. Some people claim they want a shepherd, but they really want a dog and pony show. Some people claim they want a shepherd, but want to hear the Bible taught correctly. I don't want to hear that. Don't tell me that. I want to believe what I believe and stop telling me what the Bible says, which makes no sense. Again, I said last week, I've had people say to me, you could disagree with God. You don't have to believe everything in the Bible.
No, you can't.
No, you have to believe everything in the Bible.
You can if you want to.
You want to disagree with God, you have the right to be wrong, right?
Yep.
God gives us free will. That free will includes the right to be wrong. But I don't want to stand in front of him and have God go, you know what? You were wrong about this, you were wrong about that. We're going to do enough wrong and sin by accident. There's no sense in sinning on purpose and deciding, God, I don't like what it says on page 957 of my Bible, so I'm just going to rip that page out and say, I don't agree, right? So we want to have a shepherd. We want God as our shepherd, and the world needs to know that. So he began to teach them many things. So what's he doing there also? He sees they need a shepherd, and he accepts the job, right? Which that was the plan all along, what? To die on the cross, but to teach them. He didn't just come to die on the cross. He came to teach them on his way to the cross, so they understand the whole thing. And again, some things they didn't understand until later on, but he's making sure he sets the groundwork for why he's died on the cross and who he's dying for, and what's going to happen later on. So he's going to teach us that many things. Doesn't tell us what those many things were, right? But he probably taught about himself, didn't he? Probably taught about God. Probably reiterated, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, right? No one comes to the Father but by me. So he taught them what he needed to teach them right then. 35. When the day was now far spent, which means the day was almost over. Sometimes at the end of the day, I'm far spent, right? We've all been far spent, just worn out. His disciples came to him and said, this is a deserted place, and already the hour is late. And look what they say, send him away. Tell them to go home. It's time to go. Turn out the lights, the party's over. That they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy themselves bread. So they have nothing to eat. So they're hungry. Let's close up shop, get them out of here, let them go buy bread, let them go get something to eat, because there's nothing we can do. That's a weird thing for them to say, because they've been doing miracles themselves. They've seen Christ do miracles, and now they can say, well, we have no food. What are we going to do? And they know that, what do they know about the Old? These guys are former Jews, so they knew about the Old Testament. They knew when the Jews were hungry, what did God do? Give them manna from heaven. So they had to know Christ. Christ already told them before that he was the bread of life. They had to understand that Christ could supply bread if he wanted to.
So what we're really saying is that the disciples are waxing waning.
They're kind of weak still. Even though they just did all these miracles and stuff.
Miracles.
Even though they're working for him and they've been with him
Just
now
like when they cried
for
in
a
the
while. Yep. They're still wishy-washy, or being tossed around like the Bible says don't be, right? Let's get them out of here, they have nothing to eat. But there's a lot of buts in the Bible, and those buts always point to something good happening, or sometimes something bad, right? There's a lot of verses though that are good to say, but God. I heard a pastor do a whole sermon called, but God. It was pretty good. But he answered and said to them, you give them something to eat. What? You want me to feed them? I just told you we have hardly anything. And they said to him, shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread, give them something to eat? So that's a lot of money back then, 200 denarii. I was going to look up and see exactly how much it was. I used to know this, but I just can't remember right now. But it was enough to feed 5,000, over 5,000, we'll get to that, over 5,000 people. That's a lot of bread. So they needed a lot of bread to buy a lot of bread. And he said, so yeah. So he said, did he say go buy it? No, that was their thought. He just said, go feed him. And they're like, what, how are we going to do this?
Well, they're showing their pride.
But he said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. And when they found out, they said 5 loaves or 5, and we got 2 fish. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. Yeah, they got 2 fish. Then he commanded them to make them all sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in ranks and in hundreds and fifties. So they sat down in the field where
Yeah,
it's comfortable. So they're 50 wide and 50 wide and 100 deep.
100 deep.
So you can take a head count from that 5,000, but that's only counting. Now keep this in mind. It's only counting the men. The women don't count, and the kids
They
don't
don't
count.
eat.
Huh?
They don't eat.
Yeah, they do.
They get to eat,
Okay.
but just to know how many people there was way more than 5,000.
Okay.
So you got 5,000. A lot of people go, well, there's 5,000. If half the men were married, that makes 750, right?
Yeah, Say what
7,500.
with the Bible again.
So you got 7,500.
Yeah.
If half of them if they had 1 kid each, so you got 10,000, right? There's a lot of people. No saying how many, but there could be
You
10,000.
had 5,000 head of families.
5,000 heads of families, right? So that could be 10,000 people or more, or maybe less. Depends if they had kids or not, right? And when he had taken the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, blessed and broke the loaves. I gotta stop there for a second, because there's a lot of controversy over that. Blessed and broke the loaves. Did he bless the loaves, or did he say a blessing to God the Father, you think? There's a lot of thinking about that.
One is vanity and one is not.
God supplies the food. If God supplies the food, it's already blessed.
Right.
So he looks up to God and blesses God and thanks God for supplying the food.
If you bless the bread,
We always,
now,
huh?
if you bless the bread, it's actually pride.
Yeah, it could be pride. We always think, let's bless our food, right?
Right.
We should really be thanking God and blessing God for giving us that
What's
food.
for breakfast
Right.
tomorrow? Manna.
Right. So he blessed and broke the loaves, gave them to his disciples to set before them, and the 2 fish he divided among them all. So how do you think he divided? He must have some
Smear,
kind
smear, smear.
of, yeah, some kind of knife or something, and he was
They let him smell it all.
And then that's it.
he was just breaking it up into
You don't
breaking
get a
it up.
smell.
They were really big
Yes.
fish.
breaking it up into little pieces, right?
Big fish.
He's breaking those fish up. So they all ate and were filled. So that fish went a long way, right? 2 fish fed thousands of people. And they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of the fish. So Matthew goes into a lot deeper in his storytelling of this. Mark just gets to the point and keeps going, right? So where'd the baskets come from? That's another question everybody always has. Where'd the baskets come from? It was customary for Jews to carry a basket with them. Now, sometimes they'd have food in those baskets, but these people were already out of food. Why would they have food in the baskets?
Because they traveled a long ways. to
Because
get
they
there.
traveled around, and the Jews didn't want to have to go somewhere and eat the food the people had,
Right,
because a lot of places it was dedicated to idols and stuff. So and it wasn't kosher. So, but they want to eat food. They want to eat their food, so they would carry a basket. It also symbolized when they were in bondage in Egypt, they would have a basket tied around their neck and carry whatever they were. If they were building something, they'd be carrying supplies of when they were
Right.
slaves
Yeah.
in that basket. So the Jews had a lot of use for baskets.
Jewish Samsonite, huh?
The
Okay.
Jewish Samsonite, right? So the basket was an important thing, and people travel with baskets. But there's 12 baskets, right? So they probably each disciple used his own basket. Because are you sure they had baskets? Where did the disciples just come from?
Yeah.
They just came back from the road. So they all had their own basket, right? So they took their baskets, they go out, and they feed the people, and then they use the baskets, to collect the leftovers. So 5 loaves and 2 fish, and there was still 12 baskets of leftovers.
Or the tribes or whatever you want to call it.
which represents the 12 tribes of Israel, right? That's important to know.
So we haven't even gotten into the Gentiles
Yeah,
yet.
there's a lot of stuff going on there. But again, God has enough for everybody, and more left over, right? It's representing His people there. His people fed the strangers, but still had enough for the 12 tribes and the true Jews, right? And then the disciples could eat from those baskets too, right? If you're thinking they didn't get to eat till after everybody else. So now those who had eaten the loaves were about 5,000, and it says it right here,
Men.
were about 5,000 men.
Yep.
So again, you got another 2,500 women maybe, 2,500 kids maybe, you're up to 10,000. Immediately, so he's done. Christ wasn't wasting no time in the book of Mark. Immediately, he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side to Bethsaida. So Christ stays there and lets them go. Right? Why does he send them off by themselves, you think?
Not to dwell on the vanity of it.
Not to dwell on what they just did, but also to think about it.
Right.
You go, and he's going to stay with the people and send them away, right? He says Bethsaida, while he sent the multitude away.
Yep.
Now, he didn't just go get out of here, because you think any of them had questions? He probably stayed behind in case he had questions, in case they wanted anything.
They're taken away from the Father, so that those disciples could be with. I mean, not the disciples, but the disciples they made could be with the Father as opposed to
Right.
the 12.
But so the 12 are going away though,
Right.
and they're with Christ. It's Christ and them. That's it. So these people have access right to Jesus. They don't have to run to the disciples. They don't, because what do the disciples usually do? People running up, hold him back, keep him away.
Yep.
You know, Jesus, let's go.
Isn't that kind of symbolic to like,
That's human,
know,
yeah.
that we have access?
They have access directly to Christ.
Exactly. That's it.
That's what that's showing too. You need the apostles, but it's not in every instance.
The apostles are human.
The apostles
Christ
are
is not.
human. Christ sent them away.
Yep.
The apostles are human, and they sent them away. And he stayed there to answer any questions and also get them ready to go home, right? And go back to their people and tell their people what they saw, right? Because he's trying to spread the gospel about himself.
His humility is.
And when he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. So now Christ goes off by himself, right? He sends the people home. He sends the apostles out in the boat. He sends himself into the mountain to pray. He needs some alone time after that miracle. And we see that in other passages, that when Christ did miracles, it kind of made him tired sometimes. He could feel the power go out of him when he healed the one with the issue of blood, right?
This human
A
side.
lot of things going on. 47. Now when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. This had to be planned out ahead of time. Because think about it. He sends them away with the boats.
Yeah.
Leaves himself there with no boat and tells the people to leave. What's everybody thinking? How's he gonna catch up with
Not
us?
exactly a big deal.
Is he gonna run around the lake? What's he gonna do, right? So they're in the middle. Then he saw them straining at rowing. Here comes bad weather. Have we seen that before? The apostles, a couple of them saw that before, right? Then he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now about the fourth watch of night. So what time is it, you think? Anybody know? The first watch is 6 o'clock the night before, 6 to 9. The second watch is 9 to 12. The third watch is 12 to 3. The fourth watch is 3 to 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere before 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. The fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. And you'll get skeptics and scientists going, he didn't walk on the water, he knew where the rocks were or something like that.
Speaking of that, I read somewhere somebody said, oh, he was just floating on ice.
He was floating on ice, yeah, that was frozen. No. I heard somebody say there was big rocks there, he knew where the rocks were. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well, if anybody'd know, he would.
If anybody, all right, I'll give him points for knowing where the rocks were. Pitch black. It was pitch black, he still knew where the rocks were. No, he didn't need to walk on rocks, right? So he's walking on the sea, and it says he would have passed them by. He wasn't going to walk past them,
He was in
right?
the passing lane. Okay.
But he's walking toward them on an angle. And when they saw him walking on the sea, They suppose it was a ghost. So they're afraid. They don't know what it is. Because
They
it's
don't
dark
understand
out,
the
the wind's
resurrection
howling.
yet.
You gotta be sure water's blowing around. So it wasn't like a clear vision, right? They just see a figure or a shadow of somebody walking on the water. They're not gonna go, oh, it's Jesus. Which they should have, right? But they're like, it's a ghost, you know? They're out being ghost hunters now. And they cried out. So it scared them. For they all saw him and were troubled. So they saw him, but they saw whatever they saw scared them. But immediately, when he got close enough, see this immediately, he talked with them and said to them, be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. And you'll see a lot of times when Christ is going to do something, he always goes, what? Fear not. Here's the same thing, just do not be afraid. So he's going to calm them down. Once they hear his voice, what does he say later on? My sheep know my voice, right?
Yep.
My sheep hear my voice, I know them and they know me. So again, those people were looking for a shepherd, they knew Christ was their shepherd. When they see this or hear this figure that they can't see clearly talk, they recognize Christ's voice and it's going to calm them down. Okay? Then he went up into the boat to them. So he went in the boat. And the wind ceased. So he didn't go through the whole stop wind and everything. It just stopped when he got there. Right? And they were greatly amazed in themselves beyond measure. They just couldn't believe it. This guy was walking on a rough sea. As soon as he stepped foot on the boat, the sea just stopped. But the same thing he did before when the wind stopped, the ocean stopped at the same time. And they marveled. It means they were just taken aback, right? They couldn't believe it. For they had not, now he says they couldn't, here's why they couldn't believe this. For they had not understood about the loaves, because their heart was hardened.
In themselves.
In themselves, they still, as close as they were to Christ, as much as they knew, as much as they saw, they still had limits on what they thought he could do, right? And isn't it like that today, though? Even with Christians, they think they have a limit on what God can do. You know, God, I've got this going on. I know it's big. You can't heal this. God, I got this problem. You can't fix this, right? There's no problem that's too big for God, though, right? What was that? When I was a kid, there was always a commercial for a Broadway play. Your arms are too short to box with God.
Yeah.
God can always reach down for you, though. No matter what's going on, God can fix it if he wants, right? It's always his will. Again, it's not your will. It's God's will that's going to be done. But their heart was hardened, and they were limiting the things that Christ could do. And we have to understand, if we're going to sing about an all-powerful God, right, and believe in all the omni words that God is, we got to believe that he can do anything he wants, that nothing can stop him. When he says he's, what makes God God is that when he says he's going to do something,
He does it.
he does it. Nothing can stop him. 52, 53. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and anchored there. So
Very
they,
nicely done.
of Gennesaret, yeah. And they put their anchors down. And when they came out of the boat, immediately the people recognized him. There he is. They couldn't wait to get a hold of him. So now it's probably light out now. It's probably, because all this happens between 3 and 6, it starts getting light. So it's probably the next morning because people are awake and moving around.
First watch.
First watch. We're getting close to the first watch. That's the first watch, the first part of the day. It's not really a watch though. So they recognized him. 55. Ran that the whole surrounding, ran through, wait, hold on, let's go together. And when they came out of the boat, immediately the people who recognized him ran through that whole surrounding region and began to carry about on beds those who were sick to wherever they heard he was.
Again, they're
So
looking
this is not one quick sentence. This is a run-on sentence.
Yeah.
But it's covering a period of time over a couple hours, not just that minute. Because they ran through the whole town. It takes a little while, right, for word to spread and people understand. And it says wherever he was, because Christ didn't get out of the boat and just stand there. He started walking and going to towns. So wherever he went, guess what? People, I got my cousin on this bed. Christ, can you touch him? Right? Everybody wanted Christ for what? For a miracle.
miracle that
They
wasn't
wanted
really
a
theirs
healing.
yet.
They still didn't understand about salvation. They still don't understand about eternal life and all that kind of stuff. He's going to give them that eventually and teach them that eventually. But the first thing they wanted, the first thing they're going to see is that this guy can raise people from the dead. This guy can heal all kinds of sicknesses. This guy took people who were blind or took people who were deaf and fixed them. So they want that kind of
All
miracle,
for the wrong reason, yeah.
right? And that's just a basic miracle, right? So we should at least believe that God can heal all kinds of sicknesses, right?
Sure.
If that's the first thing he did when he was on earth, it's For him, it's the easiest thing. Not that anything's hard for God, right? But he shows us that's something he wants to do. Wherever he entered into villages, cities, or the country, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might just touch the hem of his garment. Why the marketplaces? That was the center of town, right? That's where all the action was, the marketplaces.
Studio 54. Yeah.
Studio 54. No. But there's also important stuff going on in the marketplace.
Right.
Who sits in the marketplace?
The politicians.
The politicians, the judges, the leaders of the Jews, the skeptics, right? They all came, all the different kinds of religions came to the marketplace to debate and talk about God, or talk about their God. So Christ went to where? Went right to the marketplace. And I'm going to hang out here. Those Jews over there, those city leaders over there, those skeptics over there, those worshipers of false gods over there, right? The people with their idols over there, they're going to see what the real God can do. They're going to see what Christ can do. And they're going to see that people are flocking to this one man and not worshiping their statues, right? Not worshiping the things they worship and not worshiping the Jews. They're following, listen, they're following some guy who's got no authority from the actual community, right? I mean, he went and taught in the temples and they didn't try to stop him at first. But they knew he had words from, God. They understood that this guy speaks different than anybody else. And they said that earlier, right? Go ahead.
Now, all these people that
Thank God.
he healed, okay, they believed that if he touched them, they would be healed.
Right.
But it wasn't their faith that was healing
Bingo.
them.
You got it.
No, they're partly healed by their faith.
They
If they
had
had
faith, but
They had faith in,
they had faith in this man that could heal them.
right.
They didn't have the whole understanding of
Well,
who he was, what he was.
they understood that he was from God. They understood
They understood
that he was
that.
from the true God. So the faith still is in a roundabout way through the true God. And they believed anything he was wearing or touched became holy also. Became power also. Just like the woman with the issue of blood just touched his garment. He said, "Who touched me?"
She knew it.
They would have heard about that. Don't forget, that story would have spread out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she was walking, some girl who bled for 12 years, actually just touched his garment, and all of a sudden she stopped bleeding.
There
She
were
was
other
healed.
people who were healed just because they had faith. They didn't have to
Touch him, right.
So couldn't these multitudes be healed
Of
because
course, it's a
without
mixture of all.
touching?
they could have been healed without touching him. They
Okay.
could have called out and cried out and said, "Gee, Lord, just heal me." And they could have got healed by him just looking at him, right?
Those true in faith. Would
But
do
again,
that.
what's wrong with them right there, though? Their faith is still limited.
Right.
That guy can heal me, but I gotta touch him.
They knew.
People
So
do that. People do that today, right?
So as
They
time
limit
goes by,
God.
people's faith increased
That's the idea. Yeah.
and
Their faith is
because
gonna
of
increase over time.
the multitude of things that he did
Right.
throughout the marketplace was able to bring forth a deeper faith
A deeper faith, right?
in these.
But he's doing that for the other people watching too,
Right.
you know, like the ones I
They
said,
knew.
right?
Yeah.
They
So
knew.
right now, these people are limited on their faith because they think their faith counts on he has to touch them, or they have to touch them. So they'll learn as they go along. Guess what? He can do it from far away. And later on, he's going to heal. Or he might have actually done it already. Maybe they didn't hear about it. He's going to heal the guy's daughter before he even gets there,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Most of all,
So he's
they
going to
were-
show
This
that,
faith.
They all believed.
right?
most of all, they were looking for compassion.
Right.
Compassion is of vital importance.
Believed.
But
That's
again, they didn't have
exactly
to
what it was.
touch his garment. They just thought they did, right?
No doubt.
And he's going to clear that up as time goes on and show them other miracles where they didn't
There's
have
all
to
kinds
touch
of
him.
varying degrees of faith at this
It's
point.
very different, right? But faith is still faith.
Faith is faith.
Right? But again, he's going to show me, you're not going to touch me. Just like you could go and pray for something, right? Just you praying to God, right? You don't need to go in a closet and talk to some guy in another closet
Oh, I know what you're saying.
with a little window. You know, this is what I did. Please forget.
The
What?
priests used to do that.
Yeah, we did that.
Confession, right?
Yeah.
Believing.
Eileen.
You don't have to confess to another man.
Because,
Yeah,
Believe.
because the Catholic
Yeah.
Church
Cor-
put themselves in the line
You
before
can't have
God.
doubt without
Yeah.
belief.
but that was very cathartic.
But there's
too.
people that believe that.
Yeah.
I gotta go in this closet and talk to those, whatever you wanna call it.
That's
and talk
actually
to somebody.
after this.
They believe.
And that's after this, and that's almost the same kind of thing. I gotta actually touch him. I gotta go somewhere and do something. I can't just talk to God. I gotta be right there,
Yeah.
right? Why do we go to church? We go to church to worship, right? We don't go to church because we have to. We go because we want to. But there are people who say, if I don't go to church, God's not gonna bless me this week.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Because it
Right.
was a sin.
Yeah, right. It'll become a sin if you don't go to church ever, right? If you ignore God totally. But if you miss a week here and miss a week there and have a good reason, God's not gonna go, oh, look at that person. Stayed home on Sunday morning, right? So you could miss church. But if your faith is weak, oh, I'm gonna be there every single Sunday. I can't miss. If I miss church on Sunday, God's gonna strike me with lightning. It don't work like that, right? Your faith should be
Because
strong
I
enough.
learned.
Your faith should make you want to go to church, not have to go to
Amen.
church, right?
Yeah.
I want to be
You
here. I
want
want
a
to be
fellowship.
preaching,
You got a
right? I
fellowship.
want a fellowship.
Oh,
Because if something becomes where you have to do it, then it's a chore, right?
wanna do.
And it becomes you'll like it less, right? But if you go because you like it more, obviously, right? So as many as touched him, let's get to the end of this. As many as touched him were made well. So what did Christ do to himself there? He opened up to whoever touched him, whoever believed, he allowed them to be healed. Right?
Not even that. Anybody.
Anybody, right? But it's going to be people who believed.
Okay.
Because they wouldn't have come running to him if they didn't believe he could do it. So their faith was just the smallest amount of faith that they had. He said, as long as they have a little bit of faith, as long as they believe I can heal them, I'm going to heal them right there. And he does it. Now, what are these people going to do later on? They're going to run back to their people. So nothing's going to spread. This is a quick way of spreading the gospel, right? Of showing his power to the world. Because he does it right in front of all the important people, and then the other people run back to their towns. And the important people of those towns are going to see, hey, that was the guy that used to be blind. That was the guy that they carried this guy out of here on a stretcher 2 days ago. Now he's walking back in. How'd that happen? Well, we found the Jesus guy, and I touched his hem, and I was healed. So he's showing his power right there and showing who he is, and the whole area is going to get blessed by that and come to know him even quicker. And set the path for when he's gone, that they can understand, and make it easier for the disciples to go out and preach later on and bring more people to Christ. You know, because they're going to go and talk about stuff like this. Again, the Bible doesn't tell us everything they said and everything they did, but you have to know that when they go to another town later on, remember that guy everybody ran and touched his garment? That's what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That guy died on a cross. If you weren't there and didn't see it, and he rose again from the dead, and now we're here to talk about him and tell you what he wants. And that's what we are too, right? Did we see Christ rise from the dead? We just know by the Bible and by what people said over time, and it made it to us, and we decided through the calling of the Holy Spirit to believe what the Bible says and believe what God tells us. And our faith, what makes us whole? Our faith made us whole, right? And the little bit of faith those people had made them whole. I'll leave you with that.